Are you watching the PP News Live? Where the events of planet Earth and the secrets of outer space are analyzed like nowhere else. Thank you for subscribing.
Hello, how are you? We're broadcasting live. Greetings to everyone watching today. December 1st today, Monday, December 1st, 2025. I'm grateful to the whole community. With Marcella, with Jack, what are the first comments of the day? Hey, well, end of the month too. Let's go ahead with the information. A geopolitical shift in Washington after an unusual red line. Washington, Donald Trump has drawn a red line. Well, I think no one could have imagined it in these times. And it's a red line that even though there were already signs this could happen, well, the red line has now appeared from the United States to Israel. And this, regarding Syria, is obviously a move that breaks recent diplomatic tradition. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has issued a public and direct warning to Israel to stop any action that destabilizes Syria. In other words, it is forbidden to destabilize Syria. Pay attention to this issue. We're going to start sensing it soon. We had been noticing some aspects, but for it to be this clear. And well, here is the post. This is the post in which he says that he is very satisfied with the results of the Syrian government. That's the issue. The statement was made today, December 1st, on True Social, where it appeared as an immediate response to a lethal operation carried out by Israeli forces in the south of Syrian territory. We had recently told you that Israel carried out a bombing operation inside Syria, in the southern part. The United States tells them, you can't operate here anymore. The report is not only published on True Social, but also by the Agence France Presse agency and other media outlets. Well, they have been repeating this situation. This clearly has an important twist. What we are witnessing is no longer just anything. Well, it's not just a diplomatic suggestion that might have been leaked, but something public. This is where things get strange. Historically, Washington has given Israel basically an almost unlimited leeway to act in various countries around it, especially with Syria. What they call the doctrine of preemptive self-defense, that Israel could operate even going into Syria in order to prevent, so to speak. Because it's true that there are radical groups in that area, that's also true. But now there's a new government and it's being given, let's say, the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. Since the new Syrian government took power, an alliance has clearly formed between the United States and the West. Despite that, Syria maintained relationships with countries like Russia. Speaking of this, in Donald Trump's direct language, he says that Syria is evolving into a prosperous state. He suggests that there is a significant agreement and that, well, he assures that it's better for Israel not to take action in that area. Donald Trump is executing a strategy of what he calls forced pacification in that area, in which he has coordinated with actors who were previously considered hostile. By demanding that Israel cannot or should not interfere, the White House is prioritizing regional stability, he says. And what about the reconstruction business in that area? Above the imperatives of what they call tactical security for their traditional ally, Israel, we're facing what could be a clash of visions. Israel's military security vision on one side against the real estate vision, right? Basically, because wherever there are areas to rebuild, wherever there's a chance to bring in construction companies on a massive scale, there's Trump coming in. We see this in Ukraine, Gaza, and Syria. Anywhere cities need rebuilding, Donald Trump raises his hand and says, here I am, let's rebuild. Let's put up buildings, build infrastructure. There's money to be made there, obviously, right? So is this a vision of real estate? Isn't it a vision of real estate agencies? Who is currently leading the peace efforts between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States? Who is carrying it out? It's not Marco Rubio as Secretary of State as it should be. It's being led by Steve Wilkoff, a real estate businessman, a topic that obviously is becoming increasingly clear. We could be facing the end of a conflict that has lasted a long time between Syria and Israel, at least on the borders, right? Not through a military victory or anything like that, but rather with a pact of influences that is now being imposed through the White House. This clearly tests the relationship between Washington and Tel Aviv. It's not that it's going to break, but it could cool down. Who knows what might happen? Meanwhile, Israel is preparing with what they call the Iron Beam laser, which by the end of this year will be presented as a reality. In operation, the Iron Beam laser would be working against any rocket or drone that might try to enter Israel. That's a topic we'll discuss when the time comes. Well, it's installed, isn't it? Another thing that stands out is a phrase, a specific word, which is prosperity. He talks about contracts and capital flows that are ready and waiting to enter this new Syria, this pacified Syria, he says. He says the money would be moving toward this region of the world, and it wouldn't just be money for real estate, but possibly contracts as well. Also, in terms of weapons, which will be another topic we'll be looking at, he says, quoting directly, he says, "It's very important for Israel to maintain a strong and genuine dialogue with Syria and for nothing to happen that interferes with Syria's development toward a prosperous state." That's how it goes, that's how it is. Not understanding, it clearly sends Trump's message telling him this is as far as you can go in dialogue, even strong dialogue, right? But don't interfere with the evolution of a prosperous state. That's how things are. Well, it's a change, it's a geopolitical change, ultimately an important one happening right now. And it's not just that. There was a feeling that what we're talking about could happen. There was a certain feeling, but it wasn't certain. It wasn't expected that this issue would be so clear. Recently, we have to remember that the Syrian president visited the White House. He even put perfume on him in front of everyone, Donald Trump to the president, right? He gave him the little box, asked if it was a good gift, and inquired how many wives he had. And I mean, all of this that we've already talked about here, we even saw the images, right? Well, something interesting, strange. At the same time, it's happening in this situation. Let's move on to other important matters. Notice that on another topic, also interesting. There isn't a Venezuela that would not only be on alert, but apparently they would also be disappearing. Well, a large part of the allies, the strongest allies, there are all kinds of allies. There are strong allies and weak allies, and allies that are, let's say, ambiguous, right? Let's talk about the strong allies, the allies that have military capability and that have an enmity with the United States. Ultimately, that's what they share. To a large extent, Iran, Russia mainly, and secondly, China. It has other allies, obviously Nicaragua, Cuba, Honduras, even Mexico could be an ambiguous ally, just like Brazil, just like Colombia with the Venezuelan regime. But let's leave that for another point. Here, what they were expecting was a reaction from Russia, above all, and from Iran to protect them or act as a sort of protective shield with Maduro. According to the latest report, Venezuela has entered a new, different, and unknown phase. The other day, a journalist who has been very close to the topic of Venezuela said they are entering a kind of norcorization, meaning a kind of massive isolation, even with their own allies. We saw how yesterday a Russian tourism company was reported. Did you know they're not going to fly to Venezuela anymore? Are the interested tourists flying to Cuba now? And the Russians who are in Venezuela right now, they were told to start leaving Venezuela? Given the escalation, they are entering a phase of severe geopolitical isolation. That's why it's called North Koreanization. With rising tensions with the United States, Maduro's regime has found its external safety net gone. There's no discussion of a financial bailout or military intervention from its historical allies. And then a perfect storm began. The relationship with the United States will not be lost. And China, for example, won't lose that relationship. For a country that doesn't really represent an important economic factor for them, it would cost more to lose the United States over Venezuela than to lose Venezuela over the United States. That's the calculation. Especially these two countries, it's clear. What you expect, they'll do. He was going to show his mettle. In fact, it's supposedly been leaked that they've opened the door for Maduro to go live there, but nothing more. It doesn't go any further. According to an intelligence report, even parts already published in the Wall Street Journal have been corroborating some points about these isolations that are happening. This is where the idea of what they call the real comes in. Politics, so to speak, might not be. One thing is what these politicians, these countries say. No, I'm your buddy, I'm your friend, I'll help you when there's a problem, but when the time comes, it's different. During the last decade, a narrative was built about a kind of anti-hegemonic bloc, as they called it. According to what Venezuela itself said, which was the head of this bloc, within Latin America, the hard data is very different. Vladimir Putin is trapped in a war of attrition in Ukraine, which consumes almost all his resources. Simply put, no, there is no logistical capacity, there is no political capital. Also, to open another front, if he didn't do it with Iran to favor Iran, he's even less likely to do it with Venezuela, which is much farther away and also has much less to offer from a military standpoint. For its part, China has another priority. Right now, it is trying to negotiate to keep selling oil to Russia with the United States. And in this chess game, well, a piece that could be Venezuela is a piece they can easily sacrifice in order to keep other pieces that are vital. Between Russia and even China, that relationship is much more important to them, the commercial relationship, specifically in energy. There's a big deal they're looking to make through these new pipelines that will be ready in a few years between China and Russia. And it's more important for them to defend that path than to be negotiating other things right now. The isolation, basically forced by circumstances, is perhaps the most dangerous point for Maduro's regime. I mean, in other circumstances, at other times, maybe in other years, things would be very different. Given the current conditions, it doesn't seem likely. One, let's say a support, a shield that could be expected like it happened at other times, Moscow, Beijing. They mainly focus on building good relations with Trump. Another meeting has already been announced in Moscow, United States and Russia. I mean, obviously, this is Russia. Rilkov said he will visit Moscow next week. Obviously not. To talk about the Venezuela issue, they are going to talk about the Ukraine issue. They are going to talk about the business they are planning for Ukraine and so on and so on. All this business they're doing is what has them very focused right now. But let's say from the other point of view, right? Right now, the United States, specifically Trump, is in trouble since both Republicans and Democrats are starting to ask him to be held accountable on the issue of Venezuela and on the issue of the Caribbean. I'm about to tell you, an investigation is about to be opened against the Secretary of Defense. I mean, not everything is easy. Over there in Washington, the situation in Venezuela is getting complicated and maybe this could be Maduro's last lifeline. Right now, we'll talk about that detail that's, let's say, growing, that's starting to become a problem. But despite everything, this brotherhood that was said to exist between Venezuela and these countries, well, that brotherhood was set aside. Why? Because there are other businesses and things that are increasingly important. We need to keep analyzing this because it's not over yet. We're also going to talk about other things that are happening inside Venezuela. For example, let's see if we can show this image. This image once again shows movements that are happening from Venezuela. Obviously not. Reports indicate increased movements and defensive preparations in case the United States takes military action. Military sources say the initial plan focuses on dispersing forces. I don't know if this image is from a parade. Honestly, I see it more as a parade. But what the sources report, at least the intelligence sources, say, there is a plan within the government, which is first phase, defense, second phase, anarchism. They would activate intelligence units and pro-government armed groups, obviously from Venezuela, to create chaos, all the chaos possible in Caracas, and make it difficult to govern that country in the event that an invasion happens. So, the first phase is to defend themselves as much as they can. The second phase is to create chaos so that no other government can sustain itself unless it's them. There comes an attempt, at least from the regime, to create this feeling that it's not possible. They don't want to give the impression of stability without them, right? Well, and I don't think that's the case, but let's say that's the attempt they're making. That's what they're trying to explore, right? And get it out that way. So in at least one case, they'll try, right? So we have to be alert to this, that they're talking about ambushes, sabotage, guerrilla-style attacks. There are supposedly 280 hidden positions prepared at this moment, in case that phase happens. So we're going there, at least that's the idea. We'll be alert to that. Let's go. Important topic. Hey, so this movement is becoming clearer and clearer about how things will be. What they call a cyclonic bomb isn't just the cold phenomenon and how this whole situation has been developing, but there's potentially a cyclonic bomb coming, according to reports, this winter season, which not only brings this phenomenon, but it will also come along with snowfalls that will become widespread in the northern part of the country, according to reports from the United States Meteorological Service. Let's discuss what is known about the situation. Both in the northern part, from Canada even down to Mexico, and part of Central America, where quite significant phenomena are expected to occur. This would be the first storm in the United States, but a winter one, from a winter perspective. It would be a cyclonic bomb that will bring widespread snowfall to some areas, especially the northeastern United States. That will also have to be taken into account. It's part, let's say, of what will be happening in the coming days. These snowfall phenomena and even quite intense winds will bring a very strong and intense wind chill. Of cold, right? If we look, we'll see how this phenomenon or these phenomena will occur. Above all, we see that it will be around tomorrow, Tuesday, when this phenomenon of quite intense wind is expected toward the northeast, where these anomalies are precisely expected, so to speak. The winter storm system would be experiencing what they call explosive cyclogenesis or a bomb cyclone, this on the east coast of the United States. The atmospheric pressure phenomenon would have dropped drastically, intensifying the storm to dangerous levels. This, above all, they say happened in record time. Yesterday we discussed the winter storm. Today we are already talking about this phenomenon of explosive cyclogenesis, also known as a bomb cyclone. It sounds intense, but that's just its name. So, well, that's what we call it, right? This event would be affecting 70 million people from the Central Plains, basically, from those areas, also, basically no. This will start today, December 2nd, and continue for the next few days, ending between the 6th and 7th of December. It's going to bring snow, it's going to bring cold, it's even going to bring what they call heavy snow. And we're talking about areas where it's going to snow 10 to 15 centimeters, even up to 20 or 25 centimeters in some places. According to the United States National Weather Report, it states that this is not just a simple December snowfall, but a real one. Well, that's what they say. Straight up, they say. A violent, kinetic, atmospheric demonstration, right? The term bomb cyclone, it says, is not media exaggeration, but rather a precise technical definition. A pressure drop of at least 24 millibars in just 24 hours. This indicates that the atmosphere is trying to balance a massive temperature gradient with furious speed, generating winds that are at hurricane level, just so you keep this in mind. Winds near 120 kilometers per hour are visible. There they are, close to 120 kilometers per hour. So at 120 kilometers per hour, well, that's where we would be. Some places even reach speeds of 120 or 121 kilometers per hour. So really, these are hurricane force winds, but under conditions where, well, it's expected to be extremely cold, right? And obviously there will be the potential for snowfall. Is everything that's happening right now a surprise? Was it unexpected? No one saw it coming, right? So he says it, the atmosphere is trying to balance itself. This is due to a massive temperature gradient with a speed that's at hurricane level. The rainfall will be intense, and what's unsettling, let's say, isn't the report. It's not the snow in New York, but rather the fact that it combines with what we already mentioned yesterday from a polar vortex. So it's a combination of very interesting phenomena there, he says. When the polar vortex destabilizes this early, in December instead of January, it's unusual. It suggests that the jet stream, or what he calls the so-called jet stream, is oscillating chaotically. This not only predicts cold, strong cold, extreme cold, but it also validates the climate models that warned about this. And we mentioned this to you at the beginning of November. They warned that something was coming to the northern part, the United States and Canada, and Europe was also expecting something. Let's say a colder than usual season, right? With quite unpredictable phenomena. Well, this is already happening, and that's it. We're practically having the start of winter already. This will challenge the infrastructure of the United States, especially Canada. Now, if we look at the temperature issue, well, we see the following. Starting tonight, we can see how the cold will be. Well, yes, practically from west to east, the central part, even the south of the United States, even Mexico, and even some Central American countries will have cold temperatures. But the freezing temperatures are in this area. Even in some parts of the mountains in Mexico, there will already be sleet or snow in some high areas. It is also expected for the coming days. Look, this is today, yesterday, tomorrow is Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You see, the phenomenon is slowing down a bit for the weekend, but it looks like it's coming back, and that's when it comes in. This is what I mentioned about the vortex. It moves east between the 7th and 8th. That will also be interesting to analyze. But it gets a little better. I mean, better in quotes. Because we're even going to have single-digit temperatures in Mexico pretty much all week. Yeah, it's not that it's going to be single digits all day. No, it's just so you know, at night it's 7, 8, 9 degrees in the morning. It might get up to 15 and then it drops again at night. But let's say we're talking about the minimum temperatures. This is what we see not just in Mexico, but also in the southern United States. Pretty much all of Texas will also have single-digit temperatures. But pay attention, because even in the, well, I don't know, let's say the northern part of Florida, they will be close to single digits. Well, actually, in single digits. If we consider that it's in Celsius, and if we count in Fahrenheit, well, 8 degrees would be 46 Fahrenheit, right? So it's cold, but not freezing. Although there will be times when some parts over there in Texas, especially the northern part, will be mostly affected. For example, for tomorrow or tonight. They will even be in northern Texas with below freezing temperatures, so be aware of that situation. The interesting thing coming up is the phenomenon that's here in this area. This phenomenon has arrived, and tomorrow we could already be seeing it. The conditions are going to be interesting, and we'll be talking about it here. It's an incursion, apart from the bomb cyclone, it's an incursion of Arctic air. That's what the vortex brings, not Arctic air, basically no. And this, well, is going to bring higher spending on natural gas, more spending on electricity across the United States. Yesterday we saw the first blackouts and power outages, and I think we'll see more throughout the week. Well, having said that anyway, if there's any important update, we'll let you know again. Let's move on to other important information. Thank you. Well, something is happening right now. Something strange is happening on a plane in Russia. Apparently, the plane is either in trouble, disappearing, or it's turning its transponder off and on, or something like that. This plane would be in the Caribbean? This obviously draws attention because of what it could be. I mean, it could be a plane that's trying to hide. It could also be a plane that's in trouble, although at the moment there's no report of any plane having problems. But we'll keep an eye on this situation to see if any more information comes out. Since yesterday, there have been reports of planes turning off their transponders. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually a plane or an intelligence aircraft checking something related to Venezuela. Right? Even though we've seen very little from Russia in support of Venezuela, this could be one of those things. It could be that they're sending something over there, so we need to stay alert and be very cautious. But internally, I think there could still be some operations from Russia even now. Some things, more like intelligence operations that would be showing up as support, at least for now, for the regime from Vladimir Putin. That could be what's happening. We'll see what else is known about this, but obviously this draws attention. Alright, let's look at the image of this plane. This was seen on FlyRadar. It's this plane. Let's see, it's that orange plane right there. Apparently this plane left Cuba, yes, and suddenly it was flying over the Atlantic and disappeared. The plane is a Russian Y-96, which disappeared after a suspicious detour towards South America. Is this about an accident, or is it something else? Well, it's about, an accident. I imagine they would already be notifying someone to send rescue as quickly as possible, right? The diversion of the Russian 96 to South America raises questions. If this transatlantic flight simply doesn't have, some kind of fuel and it's being diverted, is it in Venezuela now, or what's happening? Or if the transponder was deliberately turned off, or if it crashed. It's a large fuselage aircraft, by the way, identified as the Illness Ilyushin 96 with a Russian flag. It disappeared from global tracking systems after making a critical course change. By the way, this course change was not reported. The incident happened in the Atlantic corridor to the Caribbean. The aircraft made a rather strange journey. It even made a turn that was quite abrupt toward the south of America. Flight range calculations show the maneuver exceeds its fuel capacity. In other words, this turn it made wouldn't allow it to have enough fuel to make it. It doesn't really have the ability to hold out. It doesn't have enough fuel for it. After what she did, the turn she made towards South America, it wouldn't make it. This also makes it stranger, doesn't it? Obviously, right? He says. The aircraft made a sharp turn towards South America, a maneuver that, according to flight range calculations, exceeds its standard fuel capacity if it wasn't planned from the start. The transponder signal stopped. There's no distress signal either, so we can't say it's an accident yet. So there are two options, right? Either it's an impact in the sea or it's a tactical shutdown of their identification systems, right? That's the big question, isn't it? About what's happening right now, right? Is this also, well, tremendous? Let's look at some other details, shall we? About what's happening with this plane? Just let me check if we received anything else on this topic. Wait for me a moment. There's something else. Let me check. Honestly, it's very curious. I haven't seen it in other media until now. I don't know if you guys have seen it somewhere, but we'll keep an eye out, right? Yes, this catches my attention. Those of you on Flyer Radar, check to see if you can find the plane. Right? Did I need to? I imagine that by now we would already know, right? Because this happened around 5:30 in the morning. I mean, when they were tracking the plane. By now it should have arrived or appeared somewhere, right? I imagine so. Well, it's not just any plane, you know? By the way, is this the plane? This type of plane is the workhorse of the government fleet. It's the one they use the most. Right, Russia? They call this type of plane the Special Flight Detachment. It's frequently used to transport diplomats and to carry out official intelligence operations. This plane is also used to carry sensitive cargo, so that's why it's suspicious, right? If it's an unscheduled diversion, where would it go? If the plane didn't crash, the only logical explanation would be that the diversion was actually planned from takeoff, but the flight plan was hidden and maybe they had more fuel than what was reported, right? It could be many things, right? I mean, it could be many things, obviously. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that situation, Dice. According to this plane, Dice says if it lands safely at the Allied airfield, like in Maquitia or Havana. With the transponder turned off, it would confirm that this plane is being used for covert operations. It could be transporting cash, transporting gold, it could be carrying military personnel, whatever they're doing to evade sanctions, it would be done on this plane. That's probably why, right? I really doubt it's an accident. But, well, given the diplomatic crisis in the region, they might be trying to recover some kind of resource. Move resources, for example, from the Venezuelan regime to another country. So there are some points, right? That could happen. In modern aviation, the transponder doesn't fail. I mean, the transponder either works or it turns off or it gets destroyed when there's an incident. But it's not like, oh, it just failed. I mean, that means someone in this cockpit made the decision to become invisible. That's what you believe, at least for now. No, so that's probably it, right? Turning it off? Even if there was a problem, they should have still managed to send the Mayday signal, right? And all this? So you really don't think it's going to happen? I mean, that they go, come on, sometimes. So this would have happened he was coming from St. Petersburg, according to the reports. He was reportedly going to Varadero, Cuba. As far as we know, there's no information, I repeat. There is no report that he was in Cuba, but yes, several times. He came and went, then vanished completely, and no one knew more, right? And he was going, as you saw in the image, clearly towards Venezuela, right? I mean, there's no doubt about the origin. I mean, it's clear. No, the origin is not in doubt either, but rather the destination. I don't really have much doubt that it's actually going towards Venezuela, right? I mean, really, like I said, we can see it here in this image. Let's see if we can take a look. I mean, if you look there, how much was really left to reach the coast of Venezuela, right? Obviously, at this point, it must have already arrived, right? So, Well, there we are seeing movements that will surely be analyzed, right? For intelligence reasons in any case, and trying to understand exactly what happened. Right? We'll need to cross-check more data. Also, how long does it take to come out? I mean, how long is he going to be in Venezuela or wherever he's going to be? Let's see where he suddenly shows up. Maybe suddenly the plane just shows up over there in Russia, right? I mean, suddenly where was he? Well, who knows, right? Nobody knew anything, right? Absolutely. This situation in the region is quite interesting. By the way, in the midst of all these struggles that are happening, there's already a bit more information about what's going to happen with Steve Witkoff these days. Will it happen or will he get it tomorrow? Donald Trump's envoy arrives in Russia tomorrow and will meet Vladimir Putin in the afternoon, Russia time, which is our morning. So, by this time tomorrow at noon, we'll already have the information about what Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin are saying, right? After several major controversies, he has lost all credibility. Let's say if it were a more or less decent government, well, they would have already fired Steve Witkoff. At the very least, just to keep up appearances, right? But Trump isn't interested in keeping up appearances. It's simply clear what the intention is and what the relationship with Russia is. And well, Steve Witkoff is going to the Kremlin tomorrow, after all the scandals he's had and the distrust he's generated, even among the Republicans themselves. But well, that's that. We're living through unusual times, aren't we? It's really intense. So, well, we'll be paying attention to that and we'll talk more about it tomorrow, Tuesday. Tomorrow, December 2nd, is when they're going to meet. The meeting is scheduled according to the spokesperson for the Russian presidency, Dmitry Peskov, in his daily briefing today. He said that tomorrow afternoon they will be meeting. So, I insist we will be here paying attention to that, right? Let's move on to other information, to other important topics as well. Something is about to happen as a plan has just been leaked to activate a massive sabotage involving 4 countries. This sabotage is expected to target the following countries. Let's get into the details. But if what has been leaked is really as they're saying, then what's coming would be a huge problem for several NATO countries. Here's the report. Yes, a leak that talks about a massive sabotage that would be affecting Ukraine, but also Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Right? NATO countries. So here I would be talking about what they call, or possibly, a dirty bomb. I mean, not a nuclear bomb, but something similar, right? Could it be something ecological? It could be, but what's coming in the next few days is something massive. If they don't cancel it now that it's been discovered. Intelligence reports indicate the interception of Russian combat orders that allegedly instructed deliberate sabotage. Wastewater treatment plants, for example, could be among them. It could be some kind of attack on infrastructure related to water. The idea is to cause an ecological disaster. The destruction of infrastructure like that, for example, could release tons of untreated chemical waste directly into the Dini River. But that would also be another of the most striking impacts. I'm sure it reveals the media channel 24, that's what it's called. Quoting direct sources, they would have had intercepted military information or documents. A major evolution would occur as they pursue a hybrid environmental war. If we analyze this, well, it wouldn't be the first time. We have to remember the destruction of the dam destruction. Remember June 2023? It was clear that was a good thing. They even flooded their own troops, do you remember? Troops that didn't get the warning from Russia. Russian troops ended up in the middle of the water. The disturbing thing about this report isn't just that they talk about a possible use of infrastructure damage. Some kind of explosive, some kind of thing they're going to use to cause an ecological disaster. The geopolitical calculation behind this would be to affect the Black Sea current, causing, well, the end of an impressive amount of fish, for example, obviously, and everything that comes with it. All these kinds of impacts don't mean that any massive spill of this kind into the Dnipro River would inevitably be carried to the southwest. Yes, this, well, would create a problem. It would be like a kind of, they say, biological bomb. Additionally, it moves slowly toward the coasts of Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey. He suggests that this strategy would be a strategy of psychological and economic attrition against NATO, without actually firing, since it's officially a missile. This would be a problem against the alliance. Basically not testing those limits of Western response, by the way. And there is a plan, and there is a response plan for what's happening, which has been between what happens and what doesn't happen. There haven't been many things, not what happens. For example, like the train explosion, the train that happened in Poland, among other things. Well, they're already talking about an attack that's being planned by NATO. We'll talk about that in a moment, but there's already a proposal. That's the first time I've heard that NATO is actually considering operating directly with Russia or towards Russia or against Russia. I mean, it is. Well, that's incredible. I'm sure they'll report it, they say. Massive contamination causing deaths, illness, or economic collapse in Romania or Bulgaria, both NATO members, would be seen as an armed attack. Is the question being asked to NATO? He says NATO lacks clear protocols for cross-border ecological warfare. Also, it's not just lifeless fish, but also this would lead to the large-scale release of sewage in a war zone, in the breeding ground. Whether it's affecting the air with some kind of impact, some kind of contaminant, I imagine something like reactivity or something like that. Or in the case of sewage, with outbreaks of cholera or dysentery that could develop in this sewage. This could cross borders through marine wildlife or maritime trade. According to reports, the collapse of these ecosystems in the Black Sea would create a semi-enclosed body of water, he says. The Black Sea has low self-purification capacity, so an event of this magnitude could wipe out the fishing and tourism industries for these 4 countries. For decades, the effect would last for decades within the Black Sea. It would be, let's say, a dead sea. So the Black Sea would become the Dead Sea. Basically, it wouldn't be tremendous. Water, they say, doesn't recognize borders nor treaties or anything. Simply, water just doesn't. And if an order like that is given, it would obviously be extremely hard for the societies living in that area. Countries in the area would be affected for a long time. Isn't that exhausting? They're already calling this environmental terrorism. No, obviously this hasn't happened, but what this leak warns is that this situation could happen in the same leak. Well, some of these points are happening, like I said. It's Channel 24 that gives this report, and they themselves show this map. There's Channel 24. They show this map where they display possibly how the attack would happen, if it happens through sewage, right? But what they're talking about is an attempt to cause ecological damage in the area, right? That's what apparently might happen. There's also another matter that draws attention today, and that's a separate point. Still, they're insisting a lot that the Princess Aiko of Japan, that's her, that she should be the next empress, right? Is there pressure for Princess Aiko to become the first empress of Japan? The popular support for the emperor's daughter has been promoted and is being promoted on social media. And here there's a debate about not reforming the succession law, because right now, under the succession law, well, the only one who can be the emperor's heir is a male. And well, the emperor is already old, so obviously people are asking, well, who's going to be next, right? During a visit to Nagasaki with Emperor Naruhito, Empress Masako has attracted a lot of attention in the media and on social networks. She is turning 24 years old. Today she turned 24. And well, a lot of people want the law of male-only succession in Japan to be changed so that it opens up so that the emperor's daughter can become the empress, right? Well, a change that in the end, well, these figures are already kind of just for show. But in the end, it's something symbolic, right? Imagine like the current prime minister, right? Sanai Takahashi. And then, besides that, having the first empress, at least in modern times, well, obviously, it also shows a different Japan, right? Another matter, just to change the subject, it is revealed that Spanish has become established as the third most spoken language in the world. Notice that you set English aside. A lot of people say, no, well, I speak English. To be able to talk to everyone, well, speak Spanish, and you'll be able to talk to a large part of the world. The number of Spanish speakers grew by 5% last year. With 635 million speakers, it is the third most spoken language globally after Chinese. El Hindi, and Spanish follows it. I imagine it will also depend on what you're interested in, but I imagine that English will continue to be that language. Well, for example, for business or for studying, it's kind of the most common one. No, I suppose. Because as people say, everyone understands you, right? But Spanish has become more popular, which draws attention. I mean, at the time when China is in fashion, it seems like India also wants to become trendy. English is always advancing because of the push from social media, movies and all that. But, well, apparently Spanish keeps growing by 5%. That's not a small thing. And this, well, it draws attention. We'll be paying attention to that. And you see that, for example, if there are attempts, suddenly, for example, from the United States to try to put a stop to international Spanish, personally, there aren't things like that. That has caused a lot of annoyance, but in the end, Spanish is still there. It keeps moving forward, and that's very, very interesting. Let's move on then to other topics, to other matters. From today, let's go. Notice that the tension remains at its highest level in Venezuela and more has just been reported. Visit Strofan. There will be a meeting at the White House where the final decision will be made. Apparently, that's not what they're saying. You know how it is? How has this issue dragged on and on, but above all, the current tug of war with other issues? No, the Einstein issue, which is still ongoing, the controversy about Pete Hegseth, who is now going to be investigated. We'll talk about that later. But now it's confirmed that Donald Trump will be having a meeting. I think it's going to be today. Let's check for information, but look, according to what's being reported, given what's happening in this strategy, how should I call it? The arrow of... No, it's not the arrow. It's called the Southern Spear, right? This strategy. Well, there's going to be a sort of war summit in the Oval Office. The event apparently is critical. The meeting is going to be at the highest level and it's scheduled for today, this afternoon, so it'll be happening in just a little while. This meeting is not just a courtesy visit from these high-ranking officials. It's a de facto war council to define the final phase of pressure on Venezuela, all bad. And then something interesting might happen, right? Obviously, watch out for this, watch out for this. Let's see what it says here because it's very interesting. Allow me to break it down, but we already need a coffee, see? It says, the lineup confirms the hardline stance from President Trump, who is meeting today. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, will also be there, as well as Stephen Miller. This suggests that the strategy will also have a strong component, not only military, but also this typical ideological component regarding migrants. And all this, why do they do it? Especially this last part. Stephen Miller and all this stuff, because they give it that touch that MAGA loves. Doesn't it intimidate you? And ultra-conservative Republican sectors are not happy with this issue, with how Trump is handling it. I mean, they're not happy about getting into a war. Because the promise with Trump was that America first means none of this stuff. So what happens outside doesn't matter. You just close your border and let everyone else deal with it. But Trump, well, once he got in, he said, well, what's outside is what's good and cool and America second. And no, he goes first to everything foreign, not everything from outside. That's how it's been since he came in. So on this topic, naturally, he handled things outside this month since he's supposed to fix things inside next. That's the plan. So, huh? Well, this meeting takes place, but they add Stephen Miller, who really wouldn't have much to do there. But they add him as a key piece, kind of to justify it. And that's in the past. And look, everything gets solved. The traffic issue gets solved. The migrant issue gets solved. Even the gang issue that also comes in gets solved. They're sneaking into the United States, right? So it's like they're going to play with this idea of attacking. Like, we attack, but because it's America first, right? I mean, that's kind of the theme I'm seeing here, right? Because we'll really have to wait for the meeting. But it's a mini summit, or as they say, basically, that's it. Well, they're making the final decision soon, right? If this is already happening, like, well, besides, they're all decision makers. I mean, they're all people who make decisions. They're not there for nothing. If Brazil is a public meeting and base, it will happen since it's already public. This little summit, so to speak, this war game, so to speak, is going to lead to an important decision now. I can't imagine this is just to say we're pulling out. Here I am, sorry. I don't think it's going backwards, but let's see, right? This meeting, just hours after the direct phone call between Trump and Nicholas, was confirmed. Yes, that's right. More information has also been given about the phone call. Yesterday we mentioned the detail, and now more information is out. They didn't reach an agreement. But in the midst of all these accusations right now, it's no longer a matter of diplomacy. It's what they call the execution of a hybrid warfare doctrine in this gray zone they're operating in. Having the two top figures in military matters, on one hand the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War and Mark Rubio, Secretary of State, shows that this is serious. If they weren't there, you might think it'll just be more talk. It's an unmistakable sign, basically, that major moves are coming. It's no longer about punishment. If it were the Treasury Department, you'd say, well, there are going to be more sanctions, but no, it's not the Treasury Department. There's military action in what I see here. Let's see what happens, but it will obviously be important, he says. The big question in this situation is, why talk to the target before meeting? For a war council? So why did this call with Maduro happen? If you're planning to go into conflict, right? Why talk directly, right? Why? Do you think what happened was that it was the final ultimatum, right? Like the classic, right? Silver or lead, right? I mean, on a geopolitical level, obviously, right? Either you get out or what comes next is tremendous, right? You don't think this was a negotiation, do you? It felt more like a final warning, the ultimate ultimatum, right? Because there have been several ultimatums. It's also not the first ultimatum that Trump has given. He usually doesn't make slow decisions in that sense, right? Obviously, they're not just any decisions either. And this, well, is also another issue that needs to be taken into account, right? A point that I also imagine will be important is the issue of shelters, right? And this whole situation, I mean, the issue of migrants, right? There's a topic that Donald Trump mentions and that we still need to discuss in these conversations that take place on Air Force One, right? On this plane, listen up.
So you said that you might denaturalize some American citizens. Can you touch on that?
Where basically what Trump is saying at this moment is that, well, he claims that he has the authority to revoke the naturalization of those who, according to him, obtained citizenship improperly during Biden's administration. In other words, if he suspects that a person or a group of people received help from Biden to be naturalized, But if they didn't meet the conditions that he believes are correct, then he could revoke that naturalization, meaning take away citizenship from these people. Well, that could happen, you know? Careful with that topic too. It's also part of this issue, right? Of this movement he's had since his first term began and now his second term, a very anti-immigrant issue, right? Let's discuss other key topics. Look at what's happening in NATO. They say nothing will be the same if this happens. A. How are they preparing the war plan right now? Which, well, was secret according to what they say. Well, it's not so secret anymore because it's been revealed that they're preparing it. Germany, 1,200 pages, 1,200 pages outlining Germany's plan. And when Germany plans, watch out because we already know, right? I mean, in this case, we're not talking about a group like what we saw in the Second World War, but they are organized, and when they are determined, well, watch out for that. Especially because it could be a conflict in which they are the leaders of the conflict. Not the United States, nor France, nor the United Kingdom, nor anyone else, right? It's part of the plan. I mean, they would lead the corporation, so to speak. The place where decisions would be made would be within Germany. A very interesting topic as well. According to what the name is, Oplandu or Operation Plan Germany, right? They called it Oplandu or Operation Plan Germany in English, right? According to the report, Germany has quietly activated it, not so much. Already a classified 1,200-page document that would radically transform the country. Thus, it says it would radically transform the country. It would stop being just the economic power that it already is. To become the NATO Military Logistics Center. The NATO Military Logistics Center. Watch out for that, okay? Mobilization and transit would involve 800,000 Allied troops and heavy machinery moving through Germany to the Eastern Front. They say the preparation deadline would be from now until 2029. German intelligence estimates Russia could attack the Atlantic Alliance around 2030. The leaks come from high-ranking military officials, intelligence reports cited by the Wall Street Journal and also confirmed. By the way, some of them are from recent tactical exercises, like remember Red Storm Bravo and other military exercises that have taken place, which have been quite surprising. There have been many mistakes, by the way. These haven't been easy exercises. They're having a big problem right now because NATO speaks different languages, has different types of military disciplines, different cultures. Everything is different. How do you coordinate that? It's not easy, especially if you've never done it on a large scale before. They've done exercises and all, but it's not the same. He says what's happening now isn't just an exercise, it's a civilizational shift in the heart of Europe. For decades, Germany designed its infrastructure plan, bridges, highways, railway networks, commercial efficiency, and so on, thinking that it was going to be a country that would be at peace forever. I mean, the country was made or remade after World War I, thinking there will be no more war, right? That was the plan. No more war. And everything was designed that way, right? And that's how it kept being designed. So now they're realizing that, well, it was a mistake, right? There's also an investigation being presented that shows what's called a friction between the military side and the material and monetary reality. There's nothing to support this project, just like they say. The foreign minister himself, Friedrich Schmerz, warns, saying these are no longer times of peace. Right now, German infrastructure is falling apart. 20% of the highways and a quarter of the bridges need critical repairs. The plan involves relearning, and as they say, relearning things related to the military. About how to have everything ready. For example, they don't have military emergency landing zones. Well, they didn't even have bathrooms. When all this started, they realized they didn't even have enough bathrooms on the military bases. I mean, it's a really crazy situation, isn't it? On one hand, they realized how vulnerable they were. And the craziest thing of all is that, well, this is public, right? So, I mean, everyone finds out that they're vulnerable, but they're not going to do anything about it. I think that's a mistake, right? I mean, it's a mistake to show that level of vulnerability. When besides, you're saying that in a few years you'll be super strong, right? And besides, with eyes set on Russia, I don't know, the temptation could be big, right? To take some kind of action on Russia's part, right? If that were to happen, it would happen already. I mean, I'm talking about 2027, because they're not going to wait for a force that could really become this to grow stronger. Strong enough to stop Russia, right? Well, yes, what's coming is really crazy. By the way, was there a meeting today? Check out the picture. Was there a meeting between Zelensky and Macron? Listen to the following.
The only country...
He says only Russia can end the war. Russia started it and only Russia can stop it. After the meeting between Zelensky and Macron, they say that the war must end as soon as possible. Ukraine, he says, needs a solid country, a peace that can last in the long term. The war must end as soon as possible. The Ukrainian leader said his meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron lasted several hours. The leaders mainly focused on negotiations to end the war, and they also focused on what the peace guarantees will be. What's the point of achieving peace if tomorrow they invade or attack you again? What's the real guarantee? Thank you, huh? What's the real assurance of peace, right? He says peace must be truly lasting. The war must end as soon as possible. Much now depends on all leaders' participation. Today, we will also talk with other leaders. President Zelensky himself would have emphasized after this meeting. So, well, we'll see who else he meets with, right? That will also be obviously key, won't it? You can also see these waves of freezing water frozen on a lake called Polan. By the way, this is listen, it's not that this one doesn't have audio, but it's when you can watch this with audio, it's amazing how it sounds like crystals clashing, right? The sound they make is really awesome. Another image that stands out today is this one we're going to show you. This is part of these. How do these Generation 3 drones arrive? Of these types already? Shahed, right? On November 30th, the Sting destroyed several planes that they already call Generation 3. These have jet propulsion, do you see? They have a different propulsion system, you know? And well, these drones are faster than the Iran models, similar in shape to the Shahed, but different in their design. Especially in their propulsion, as we can see, there it is. Are these tools of war being used more and more, right? Drones of all kinds, right? Impressive. Let's move on to other important matters. Today, by the way, they published a list of the most cultured cities on the planet. The best cities for culture. And well, this publication came out in which, by the way, Mexico City appeared as number 1. Mexico City, which, by the way, has been filled with Americans and Canadians. Well, and people from all over the world, huh? People who go to live there precisely because of the culture, right? Because of the variety of things there are to see, right? You mean museums, theater, food, etc.? The second place in the world would be Praha, then it's Cape Town in South Africa, and fourth place is Buenos Aires. Then comes Athens, Edinburgh in 6th place, 7th is Vienna, and 8th is Madrid. Then comes Florence in Italy, and then Melbourne in Australia, right? Number 10 Paris and number 11. I think there's another Latin American city in there. Sao Paulo is number 14, New York is 15, and that's the end of the list, right? Is Montreal number 12? Well, there you have it, right? Which cities are the richest culturally speaking? Well, interesting, obviously. Now, well, there are a lot of divisions, right? This is specifically about culture, right? And so, well, these kinds of statistics are made, right? By culture, by economy, by security, by 1,000 things, right? Well, that's the thing. Let's move on to other topics. I wanted to discuss what's happening with the Republicans. They're making demands of the Republicans in the United States to investigate the Secretary of War. I mean, the Secretary of Defense, right? But he was in charge of the Pentagon, right? Pete Hegseth. And the thing is, it was revealed and he admitted it publicly and he mentioned it again on social media, right? This one? Well, when they attacked these boats, there was an occasion in September when there were people injured. They were going to rescue the injured. I said, wait, no, don't rescue anyone. Attack, shoot again. I mean, the classic coup de grace, but declared by a secretary. I mean, even Trump, yesterday he said he doesn't think he did that and it's going to be investigated to see what happened, but he still doesn't think he said or did that. I mean, well, so it's clear that he doesn't agree with that situation. I mean, he said it like he wanted to smooth things over, but that's all. Look, right now, there's a problem with the people closest to Trump. Let's get into the details, because the problem is more serious than just him doing his own thing. There are more issues among Trump's close staff. So first, let's start with this, because even the Republicans themselves are already investigating this situation. High-level lawmakers from the Republican Party, who are usually aligned with the defense, have broken ranks to demand an urgent investigation into the alleged verbal order from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to annihilate all occupants of suspected drug trafficking boats, including the execution of survivors who were wounded after the first attack. That would be the most delicate part of all, wouldn't it? On September 2nd in the Southern Caribbean, a United States commander reportedly witnessed another attack. He reportedly ordered a second strike on a vessel that was already neutralized. To eliminate 2 survivors and thus comply with an alleged directive, they told him there should be no witnesses. The toll of the campaign has already reached 83 people who have been eliminated in more than 20 attacks that have taken place. The original investigation was part of a leak to the Washington Post. Yeah, is it leaked somewhere? Is that situation confirmed? And now? Both Republicans and Democrats are, well, calling for an Armed Services Committee in the Senate and the House of Senators. Also Roger Wicker and the Republican Mike Rogers. This is also confirmed by Newsweek, who say there will be an investigation. So has this already gotten out of control for Piscis? It could be that we see the president fall, the president, the Secretary of War, or the Secretary Piscis. His involvement is very unfortunate. I mean, a lot of generals are extremely angry. I mean, people at the Pentagon are extremely angry because he has taken away their honor, they say, right? Now, and other things too. What we've been witnessing is not just an operation, let's say, of investigating a single issue. It's relatively simple, but rather they're investigating a possible crime, right? Or a possible or alleged crime, right? The key would be then, first, the issue of designating the cartel of the Suns towards these boats and towards the cartel of the Suns and towards Maduro's regime. And all of this that's happening, even calling it now, foreign terrorist organization, which would be foreign terrorist organization. This just happened, I mean, officially, and people have been saying that for months, but officially, they are labeled a foreign terrorist organization. It was at the end of November. I mean, last week is when this decision was officially made. But the attacks have been happening since September, right? So since then, well, that's being investigated. On what grounds are they shooting at them? According to the reports, this would indicate that the leadership knew these orders were violating international law and the Geneva Convention. Yes, be careful with that. So, would this be a problem related to treaties, to international law? Hey, they had already been declared terrorists. Oh, well, but at that time it hadn't been declared yet. I mean, that hadn't been accepted yet. By changing this label, the Pentagon seems to be testing a new doctrine of engagements, which they call rules of engagement or rules of engagement. They're changing the operating rules. which erases the line between police action and basically, well, open warfare. The existence of this memorandum, classified by the way by the Department of Justice and drafted in the summer, preemptively shields military personnel from being prosecuted for these attacks. So they have this defense for you, but it's not very clear if this defense is actually going to be valid. This might have to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court. This topic is pretty crazy, isn't it? It's going to be an issue that's going to be debated over the next few days. There's going to be a debate about this situation, right? It's tremendous. Now let's go to the comments. How has Magic Luna been? Greetings to everyone in the community who's joining us. Thank you very much. There's a very interesting quote. It says, "This Department of Justice memorandum, drafted over the summer, stated that United States personnel involved in the attacks would not face prosecution." In other words, they were already telling them, don't worry, there's no problem, you won't be prosecuted because there's already protection in place. They would only tell you that if they knew it was something illegal. If they're telling you, well, that it's already going to be protected illegally, because obviously what you're doing isn't right. I mean, you're breaking some rules that everyone knows about. By the way, the publication by the New York Post draws attention. The show Maduro says this publication, and of course they publish an article about what's happening over there between the United States and Venezuela. This is a publication that draws attention. It's, well, the Maduro or Maduro Bete, basically. That's the cover. That topic also catches his attention because, interestingly, the name Gringo is supposed to come from this, from the idea that the ones in green should leave, right? I mean, Gringo, I don't know how, well, that's one of the versions out there, right? But there's also another thing that stands out, right? Is it this one? Well, this update where we keep seeing massive floods in Indonesia. There are already 600 people dead. Do you remember when it was 400? Well, it's 600 now and there are 460 missing. What happened over there in Indonesia, Vietnam and Malaysia is really tough, especially in Malaysia and Indonesia. I think they were the ones who had it the worst. Second place, third place, actually. First place Indonesia, second place Malaysia, third place Vietnam. About how hard it was for them, and the Philippines and India struggled too, right? With this, they went through incredible storms. They said there in Malaysia that they hadn't seen storms like that in 3 centuries. This rain was really something. How have you been? Hi Marcela Leonardo Rublox, how are you? It's great to see you. How are things going over there? Victor says. When these streams pass through Mexico, says Gordo Panfletario, Gordo Panfleto. Greetings, Victor. How have you been? It's a shame your arguments fall apart because of your insults. You could have commented calmly instead. But I have to say goodbye to you, my friend. Goodbye, my friend. It's a shame you don't have an argument to have a conversation, to talk. It's curious how suddenly I feel like they're either paid people or people who just don't care. Things aren't working right up there for them, but well, it's kind of curious, isn't it? That's just how I feel. When there's the ability to debate and people with arguments can really teach you about a topic, definitely. Even if you disagree with someone, sometimes people lack arguments. Gordo, sorry. I mean, that's not funny, but anyway, he says, greetings. How have you been, Francisco? Greetings to Texas, he says. How true is it that Mexico is suing the United States today for the territories lost in 1848? Thank you. How have you been, Francisco? Very good. No, I honestly don't think so, but if it happens, we'll talk. Honestly, I don't think so. Francisco, how have you been? What's new? He mentions that no country respects the Nuremberg agreements. Leonardo says, well, yes, there are countries that respect them. No, I mean, not all countries respect them. It can be, but maybe there are some points that have become obsolete. Also, I mean, how much time has passed? But if you don't respect international law, whether you're the United States or Russia or whoever you are, well, that's wrong, he says. Hello, Pepe, he says. How are you, Mario Balcon? Greetings to Argentina. What's up, Veronica de la Cruz? How's it going? How have you been? What's up? Who's Mario Solteros? How are you? Hi, Mario. What's up? Did you say Alex Medina? The Russian plane that's in Venezuela is to transport the tourists who are going to Cuba, he says. No, that's not true. It's a stopover for those planes. In fact, they left yesterday. No, it's a different plane, usually used by the government and intelligence. It's unrelated to that. Mayo and Luna say hi. How are you? Omar says many students at work speak Spanish, not because others don't know English, but because they enjoy learning languages. Yes, Omar, totally. A few years ago, I went to California or Los Angeles. And on top of that, since I like talking to people, I was excited and said, let's practice my English. How cool, right? And I don't know what else. And then the person who helped organize the trips would order Ubers for me. No, because at that time they either hadn't arrived in Mexico yet or were just starting to. And well, I got all kinds of people. You know, I got Asians, African Americans, and they all spoke Spanish. I would say, no, but don't you want to speak English? They'd say, no, it's just that I want to practice Spanish, they'd say. So they go on speaking Spanish, and with excellent Spanish, and I didn't. Well, alright, that's fine. No, I didn't have the chance to practice English except for reading little things. Almost everything was also in Spanish. I mean, it was like... In California, yes, but it's different in other states. A lot of people wanting to speak Spanish and not being able to... I mean, they weren't Latino, right? I mean, the ones I got to talk to, they were just typical Americans, right? Basically, no. And speaking perfect Spanish, it's crazy. They say, how are you, Jerez? Cheers. And cheers, Pipe. Saw you on television. The president of the CNE just announced that the difference in Honduras is between 1 and 2. There are 576,000 crazy votes in the close ones. I mean, 57% of the count. And it's really close. The situation there isn't extremely tough, this situation. Let's see what the people from Honduras say. I mean, what they comment. I don't know if they're watching us right now, but well, that would be great. Their comments say that they don't. No, well, it's not that. Yes, if I skip the comment, I mean, it's like being afraid of them, right? That's why I think it's important to read and expose them. At the end of the day, that's what they are. This kind of troll or people who have no arguments other than insulting. That's it. That's why you read them. But if they insult, well, you just let them go. You say goodbye. No, not this. And we won't complain about insults unless there are arguments. Those are welcome, right? That's what Pepe says. According to the Nuremberg agreements, they say we have to respect the international court. He says we have to respect the international court, but they don't have the means to make the powers comply. He says, no. Well, if you're talking about just the powers. If not, let's say the 5 powers, they're not far from complying. And besides, they veto themselves. I mean, if they need to make a decision, they go to the Security Council and they themselves veto whatever doesn't suit them. I mean, basically, that should be removed. It can't be that a power can veto anything, right? I mean, if they just don't agree, they veto it, and that's it, right? The problem is that even though we're going to go, that they should be forced to keep the peace, and if you know you're obligated to peace, any country, it doesn't matter which one. I don't know who will force or tell them. Well, I mean, I force you to be in... No, I mean, there's nothing like that. No, there's nothing like that. That's all. It's like the paperwork. And what if you want to do this or that? What a mess. So many people defending criminals. End of the world, says Apurare Meteorito. How has his life been? Greetings. Very good. This is a greeting to the whole community that's arriving, right? Thank you very much, Rublos Francisco. How have you been? Very good. Greetings. Who else is out there? Miguel says, how have you been? Greetings, Miguel Angel. How are you? It's good. Radrut, what's up? Hello to you too. Miguel Alejandro, how have you been? Is there anyone else around too? Belinda, greetings, Belinda. How are you? Awesome. Let's go, right? Let's move on to other matters. Let's move on to other important topics as well. We have a report from Atlas. We'll do it on Pepe Clips in just a moment. There's an interesting, really cool topic. And there's also a report that a journalist has published. I believe it was on Fox News. There we have the video where they talk about a report that is about to come out, which is related to the United States hearings on the unidentified flying object topic and all these investigations they're doing. If the report comes out, they say this will be a turning point. Basically, it's a change in global paradigms. That's what they're handling there. Let's discuss that and see what you think. We can watch some clips and keep talking if you want. See you later.
Thank you for watching the PP News Live, where the events of planet Earth and outer space secrets are analyzed like nowhere else. Thank you for subscribing.